Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where in the US you are joining us from, or in the world, I should say. Please forgive me. Hi, my name is Rosalie Olmsted. I am WiCyS Executive Assistant. It is an honor to have you all here today with WiCyS Strategic Partner Salesforce. But before we get started, I would like to give a quick overview of the WiCyS organization. We often go by our name, WiCyS, which is exactly what we are, a global cyber sisterhood. WiCyS is a 501c3 nonprofit organization with a mission to recruit, retain, and advance women in their careers in cybersecurity. Our community is made up of over 10,000 members in over 90 countries. We have 70 professional affiliates and 270 student chapters around the world. We offer a variety of programs and initiatives throughout the year, including our scholarships, annual conference, leadership series, Job Board Plus Plus, Speakers Bureau, our mentor mentee program, and many more. We owe all of our wonderful initiatives to all of our strategic partners who fund our organization year round. Our tier one strategic partners being Akamai, Amazon, Bloomberg, Carnegie Mellon's University Software Engineering Institute, Cisco, Ford Motor Company, Google, Lockheed Martin, Microsoft, Optum, Sandia National Laboratories, and Sentinel One. Please don't forget to ask any questions throughout today's webinar. If you have them, please drop them in the box below, and we will get to them if time permits at the end during a Q&A session. And lastly, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the WiCyS newsletter. You can do this at wicys.org and the subscribe button in the upper right-hand corner. With that, I will be turning it over to Elaine and Seema with Salesforce.
Thank you, Rosaline and WiCyS, so much for the opportunity. We are absolutely delighted to be here. I am Seema Sangari, VP of Program Management at Salesforce. I manage a global team of technical program managers that help deliver critical programs across the company. I've been in IT and security for over 20 years and last 5 years at Salesforce. Before that, I worked at Symantec, Apple, Yahoo, Cisco, managing security product portfolios. I have a bachelor in computer science from India and an MBA from UC Davis. I'm based in Bay Area, and when I'm not working, I love hiking and gardening. One of my personal highlight was doing rim to rim hike in Grand Canyon in a single day. With that, my awesome partner Elaine.
Hi, Seema. Thank you very much. I'm Elaine Doyle. I'm a principal architect in data security in Salesforce. So I've spent over a decade working in cybersecurity and another decade in the financial industry as well. I've been a principal architect for 18 months. And before that, I led a 100-strong identity team, managing identity across our enterprise and Hyperforce cloud environments. My passion areas are AI, identifying security gaps, and I love connecting technology, law, and policy, elements that I believe are super important for creating a strong and secure digital future. In terms of education, I have a Bachelor of Information Technology, an MBA in Technology Management from University of Washington, and an associate degree in Accounting and Finance. My audacious career goal is to be a CIO for a multi-million-dollar company within the next 5 years. And in my spare time, I love to follow the stock market. I hit the cycling trails, do a little bit of skiing. I love spending quality time with family and friends, and fitness always on my agenda.
That's fantastic, Elaine. With that, we will get started. All right, demystifying AI for ops. So, Elaine and I are here to talk about when we are going to ground you some of the overall basics of AI, key components of AI, need of it in AI ops, and then Elaine's going to walk through a simple demo of how she's used it, and then we'll bring it all together. With that, let me just kick it right away. As we all know, we are here in midst of AI revolution. I was at Salesforce Dreamforce last week and listening to NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang, and a tagline that he said was, "This decade is going to be the most interesting one," and I fully believe in that. Um, the different waves of the AI that we have seen. Let me just quickly walk us through that, and then we can dive right into the details. The first wave is that we have most of us are very familiar with predictive AI. This is about learning from the past, analyzing the past to forecast future. A lot of us who use Spotify, Netflix, and other social media, Amazon, we actually observe this quite a bit. The second phase is where we are right now with the last year or so, generative AI, which is using a lot of creating a lot of content, which can create human-like text responses, all of the good stuff. And great example of it, ChatGPT has definitely changed the way we work and operate right now. The third wave actually is autonomous agents. This is an interesting one. This is where we are actually right now moving on. A classic example for those of us who are in the Bay Area, self-driving cars like, Tesla, Waymo, where they can independently operate some of the human functions. Salesforce also announced Agent Force, a lot of agents to which actually automate some of the repetitive tasks on each of the clouds. The last one, I'm going to say the artificial general intelligence. That's the capability to perform any intellectual tasks that humans can do. I believe is quite hypothetical, and it will be interesting when and if we get over there.
Seema, can I add one nugget if you don't mind? I think one thing that you've mentioned, of course, is Agent Force, and Agent Force is the latest, new, and greatest. We're not here today, I just want to explain to the group that, to talk about Agent Force, because that's quite specific to customers of Salesforce, at least at this particular point in time. But what we are here to do is explain common building blocks that any person, regardless of their experience, can go and use for free. And not only can they be used, in Slack, which is Salesforce's choice of communications tool, but same mechanisms can also be used whether you're in Microsoft Teams or also in Google Chat.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. Perfect. Moving on, I think as much as we hear a lot of breakthrough in AI models, whether it is a new version of GPT that's coming out, the key takeaway, as Mark Benioff put it really nicely, is the data. The real asset is in the data itself. The real gold here is the data itself. While the models are really crucial in taking those large volumes of data and transforming them into insights, I think of models just like as tools, just like any other tools. They can be improved, they can be replicated, they can also be replaced. So these models are just like commodities in today's world. However, data is unique. It's the richness of the data that's going to make these models more accurate, and more and improve the decisions. And that is some of the key takeaway, that if you took nothing from this webinar, this is one thing I probably want you to walk away as you think about the AI. All right, now about AI and AI ops. So, as we think about today's IT environments, our world is getting more and more complex. We are in this world, our IT environments are full of multi cloud systems, hybrid architectures. We all know microservices, and there is a lot of demand to make it to actually to have a real time performance. Our traditional operators are struggling to keep up with the scale, speed and the complexity of the demands. There is a lot of data these systems are generating, and it's humanly impossible to actually keep up with all the data and the reports that come out of it. And a lot of these is mundane, this repetitive work. And this is where we feel that, hey, automation along with AI and ML are some of the key techniques and the game changers to manage the complexity and navigate and drive forward in the world here. So, what is AI ops? AI ops. As I already talked about it in terms of the need for it in the IT operations, I think AI ops is now a paradigm shift in terms of how we manage our IT infrastructure, moving from more reactive way to more proactive, intelligent operations. This is where we can leverage our automation data in terms of improving the performance, reducing the manual burden on our IT teams. I think an analogy that comes to my mind as Elaine and I were talking about is AI for ops is to IT is what autopilots is to airplanes. Keeps things moving, of course, on course, manage the day-to-day stuff while the operators can focus on the big picture over here.
Can I make a clarifying comment as well, Seema, if you don't mind? Because I think the term AI ops can be used in multiple ways. And in the environment that we're in now, and what we're going to look at in terms of a problem space here today, is AI to improve operations and to reduce the number of humans doing operations. So that's AI for ops. There's also the opposite that I think will become the next wave of skill set, because some folks might be quite worried that maybe their job is going to be replaced. But remember, when there is AI for ops, equally, there will need to be a whole support model for operations to manage AI, and that's ops for AI. So just be mindful of like AI ops. That's why we like to call it AI for ops, because the flip side is actually nearly another discipline.
Yeah, no, this is a really important point, and thank you, Elaine, for touching upon this. Okay, moving on. What are some of the key components for AI for ops? LLMs, large language models, as we all know, like GPT-3, GPT-4, they're often designed and they to understand and generate human languages at a massive scale. These models also get trained on a large amount of data to generate those, actually the human-like responses for us. However, LLMs are not perfect. Since they rely upon static training data, guess what? The data can get stale over time. This is exactly where RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation, comes from. I think it's very, very fascinating. In my mind, while LLMs are amazingly good, amazingly right, there are some things that they get interestingly wrong. And 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 RAG is where, instead of just relying upon the LLMs, think of RAG as where we are actually just not relying on the LLM, adding a content store to the LLM so that it can fetch the relevant and the most up to date data and source it. So that to me is a game changer. Elaine, go for it.
And I was going to say as well, like that, I think like that every company, regardless of how small or how large, you have information that's relevant to your company, that's relevant to your customers, whether external or internal, and sometimes can be even tribal. So RAG gives you an opportunity to document and or use existing documentation, which has that tribal and internal knowledge. And usually the model will flow to first retrieve information from your local store and then supplement potentially with external sources, and then do the language manipulation to make sure that it's readable.
Perfect. Key benefits. I'll quickly go over this. I think the important key takeaway on this is AI for operations is more than just a trend. I think this is the shift that we are heading to. This is where it's going to enable the teams to move from more reactive to proactive management. And by deploying this is where large scale companies like Netflix, Spotify, they can ensure Salesforce that their streaming services and other services remain uninterrupted during peak times, providing us all users with a very seamless experience. With that, I'm just going to hand it over to Elaine to walk us through some examples and some demos. I'm super excited now to see what Elaine has in store.
Thanks very much, Seema. And please feel free to chime in to any of the themes, or if maybe there's something that I'm not clarifying and you think the group could benefit from clarifying, please feel free to jump in. Okay, so before we go any further, I'd like maybe just to speak about some of the technical details and cover the basics. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Slack, it's a messaging platform, similar to Discord or Microsoft Teams. It allows for direct messaging, group calls, group messages, creating channels, and also doing single calls, which are called huddles, or group calls as well. So these are the building blocks of the workflows that we will be discussing, because what we're building will be integrated with Slack. As I mentioned before, remember that with Microsoft Teams and Google Chat and other chat platforms, they have similar type technology to drive AI and RAG for their platforms. And I'll show at the end what they're called. We have a slide on that later on. So there are three, before I go into the steps, I've put together kind of like a slide on resources. Sometimes getting started can be a little bit scary. You have to read the intro guides. You have to, understand what it's like to do a quick start. Looking at videos online and also looking at the tutorials and the demos within the Slack documentation can be really useful. And if you are already a developer and want to learn more, you might want to start straight away with Slack developer tools. And most certainly, learning about GitHub, if you don't already know about it, is going to be key for you, because GitHub is like your dictionary where you will store all of your code, make changes, manage versions, and allow others potentially to collaborate with your code as well. So when this deck is shared, the links for anything that's underlined, you'll be able to actually get into those links. So now looking at the three-step process that the demo will then explain. We will be showcasing the Slack workspace, which is where all your channels and chats will happen. And then the demo will show the creation of a workflow to help a particular problem space around reducing human operations. So the problem space that we're going to be looking at in particular is a hypothetical service. A customer will come to the hypothetical service and will say, hey, I need help with a problem. Installing, authenticating, maybe general troubleshooting. And the demo that we've created uses RAG and AI to generate responses to that particular customer. So here on the left, oh Lord, I'm sorry, I see two there, but it's actually step one, apologies. I'll show creation of a Slack channel and integration of a bot to that channel, and also adding a workflow to the channel. And it's actually the workflow that's presented to your customer and provides them options that they step through in order to get the automated response. Next, we'll look at the Slack app component, the anatomy of a Slack app. What are the important things to remember as you create a Slack app? And also how you can leverage external sources to give you pre-created manifest files, which is the code outlining the steps for your app. You can even go onto github.com, you can actually search for show me Slack app manifest, and it will. ChatGPT and Google will also be able to actually respond to you with Slack with sample manifests. I'll also show you a little bit about Git and also setting up what I set up for my local environment when I was actually doing this work myself.
Question for you, Elaine. Do folks need any special license or permissions in order to do some of this work, or is this available all, publicly?
So if you are a new starter and you just want to get started with, hey, what is Slack? How do I create a channel? How do I create a workspace? It's all free. Similarly, github.com, you can create an account on github.com and read all about GitHub for free as well. The OpenAI, there are some elements of LLM that are free as well, like the OpenAI ChatGPT is free, the bottom tier. As you want to use more, there's subscription, and you can actually put a credit on your account if you wanted to do particular activities for you. On the other hand, if you are already a user of Slack, there may be, so for free, there's no permissions, to answer your question, Seema. For example, if you have Slack internally in your company already, there may be some administration rules that around maybe creating workspaces and creating channels. It probably are fairly minimum, but you would want to check internally with your own company and teams to determine what permissions are required where you already have Slack in situ.
Okay. No, fantastic. Summarizing, most of this is freeware stuff. You can tinker around and do some of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Even the RAG, like the RAG system that we have based our demo on is RAGflow, which is a freeware product from Git.
Okay.
Yeah. So just want to look at the overall flow from customer. Customer comes to the Slack channel. I've got a problem that I need you to help me with. The Slack bot takes that information, sends it back through the Slack app to the RAG service. It references local documentation. Then that raw information is sent to your LLM, which frames it a little bit better, creates it in natural language, and sends that back through the Slack app back to your channel. In my case, I've also managed to integrate the support bot with with our internal ticketing system and also our on-call system. So it depends on what level of depth you want to go to, but there's functionality to do quite a lot of really interesting things with this technology. So I want to spend a moment getting a little bit more into RAG and AI, because that's kind of like the crux of what is the challenging thing for your mind to get around. So when the user submits an issue, that input goes to the Slack app via the workflow and then onto the RAG retrieval service. The RAG service then searches its local database and sends the results in raw format to your AI LLM service, which formats the summary, sometimes add extra things it finds from the outside world that might also supplement that response, and then sends that AI response back to the Slack channel to you. And next, we are going to have the demo. So the demo will show you those 2 steps in the main, and then at the end, then just do an overview of what we have achieved. Please enjoy. So it has actually, here are the labels for troubleshooting that a customer can. Sorry, 1 second. And we're off. Okay, so I want to talk you through 3 slides, the step 1, 2, and 3 that we discussed in the presentation. So number 1, understanding workspace, the Slack workspace and Slack workflows and bots. The next thing then is getting more into how you create an app and how you use your local environment and GitHub to control that data and that code. And finally, then understanding the overall flow. So as we go, I'm going to show you how by using ChatGPT, you can make your level of understanding of all of this a little bit easier. So I'm going to leave ChatGPT open there in the side, and I'll show you as we go how you can use that to make your life a little bit better. Okay, so in my scenario, the problem that I was trying to solve was
responding to multiple requests in a more streamlined way to reduce human operations. So in my investigation, I started to look at, hey, what bots, what automation, what way can I do this? And by looking at, using ChatGPT, by going online, I was able to determine that, hey, there is this concept of like Slack apps that creates internally a Slack bot user that you can deploy into your Slack workspace. And then there's code that you can attach to that, which will help you build workflows that will use the bot to perform certain actions. So today I'm going to show you how we're creating a workflow that will take certain questions from a user or a customer and search a back-end RAG database for that existence of those words, and then respond back to the user in a human readable way, in a way hopefully that will solve their problem. So let's take a quick look at the Slack workspace. So I'm in my internal Salesforce Slack workspace, which is basically our environment where lots of teams have their channels. I have created this Slack channel called Test Support Bot PKI. And into that channel, I have integrated a Slack support bot called Support Bot. The mechanism for adding bots after they're created is very, very quickly. You click in here to add apps, you search the name of the bot, and as long as you have a connection using tokens to the Slack API, which we will look at in a few moments, adding that app into your Slack channel is very, very simple. At this point, I'm going to try and jog your mind a little bit forward because I also have created a workflow and I want to show you how to bring that workflow into the Slack channel, and then we will work our way back right through to how I created it and how I actually got it to into the channel. So workflows are deployed by clicking on here, clicking on workflow, and I'm doing this right now to actually kind of like bring my workflow into my channel. I'm going to choose an event. It's going to start from a link. So all of these steps are in the Slack documentation. Because I have done it numerous times, it becomes a little bit easier for me. I know that I want to have a welcome message. I want to make sure that my bot has a message. I want to make sure that the workflow that I'm running responds to the person who's using the workflow, that it's only in the channel where the workflow is used. And I have created a workflow, which is in the form of YAML, which is a key value pair. And I have called my service X. So I'm going to call this a name and I'm going to call it service big X, service support. It's a brand new workflow. I'm going to save it in here. You can give it any name you want. What's over? I'm going to finish up there. So, publish. And done. So at this point, the workflow is added to my Slack workspace, but not yet to my channel. So let's see in my channel, I go to workflows. Actually, I think I'll click, workflows and feature workflow. Here's I've done this a couple of times, so you can see I was actually practicing. So service sub X is my brand new workflow. And now I can actually run my workflow. So to run the workflow, you click on start, come back to messages, and the workflow will give you a wee little message. It'll say, hey, hi, how can I help you? So this is to emulate a customer. A customer would come in, and you can see here how my workflow shows here on the bottom. So any new customers now who come to my channel will say, hey, okay, in order to get support, I can just click on this button and successfully start a workflow. I'll populate a message in here. Okay, I have a question. Urgency, it's a general question, it's minor. Support is for getting started. Okay, please. Oops, sorry. getting started. Help me install Service X. I don't know where to start. Submit. So at the back end, as a support team, I have already added some documentation to the backend RAG database. So what this workflow should do is connect to RAG, which is configured through my bot configuration. It should say, hey, is there anything in that backend database that relates to getting started with Service X? In Salesforce, we have an internal LLM, which is used to reformat answers in human readable language. And that's called Einstein. So in this case, the support bot has said, while you wait for an engineer, here's a suggested answer from Einstein GPT. To install, please do X, Y, and Z. So it has actually responded with information which is useful to me. Yes, that's exactly what I need. So did AI answer solve your problem? Click yes to close request. Wonderful to hear. Does it do anything else? Feedback. Please give me feedback on the support experience. Okay, in this case, I'm quite happy with that support experience. Okay, so now I'm going to take us back and I'm going to look at how we got to this end. So in order to start, most likely you're going to say, hey, listen, how do I create a Slack app? So there's many ways of working out how to create a Slack app. You know, let's go to trusty ChatGPT. How do I create a simple Slack app? Now, if you don't have access to GPT, you can also go to Google, or you can just go to the slackapi.com website. And here you can see there's documentation and tutorials available to you. I find the fact that I can interact with ChatGPT really, really powerful here, because it actually says, hey, in order to create a Slack app, yeah, you go to this page, choose from scratch. So there's also the option to choose from a manifest, which is, you know, what we've done here in the background. But ChatGPT is quite powerful here. And it also says, hey, if you're working locally, you can also, on your laptop, install some packages and create sample scripts. But anyway, let's go to the opening screen of the Slack app. And I would like to show you an app that I have created. It's not the one that's deployed right now with the back end, what I showed you a minute ago. It's very, very similar. And there's a reason for me not showing the exact one, because when you create an app, there are lots of tokens and secrets that you may not necessarily want to share with the world. So that's why I'm showing you one that is it's not in production and it's not in use. But I want to show you the anatomy of that app. When you create it, literally you will go, if we were to create one right now, create new app. And there are two choices, from a manifest or from scratch. From a manifest means that you have a set of predefined code that you can copy and paste into this application. What does that really mean? Well, a manifest file is a set of instructions to the bot. So what is a Slack manifest file? Can you show me a typical? It's a YAML, which is a markup language, or a JSON file, which are file formats. It's a description of the makeup of that file. It shows the bot name, behavior, permissions, and interactive commands. So even ChatGPT will create you something called a manifest file, which you can then use within your app. In my case, I created mine from scratch, and I let the app guide me through the creation of that. But you've got a choice. So getting stuck in here. Basic information, credentials, tokens that allow you to connect to a workspace, an icon, make it pretty, and then how to delete it when you're done. Other important information, OAuth and permissions. Here is where you define the permissions that your Slack bot can have. You would probably need to look up the documentation when it comes to your particular use case. But I have added read, channel history, things like chat write, customize commands. Worst case scenario, you add them all and see what works for you. Or you start small and you go forward and see what's needed. Again, the documentation will give you fairly good information on what's needed here. Important, when it comes to installing your app into a channel, this is where you would define the workspace that you want to connect to. So it's important to note that because Salesforce uses Slack quite extensively, we've quite a lot of development, sandbox, and production workspaces. If you are starting from scratch and you don't have Slack, all of this can be set up yourself for free. You can create up your own Slack. You can create your own Slack workspace, your own Slack channels, and you can create your own Slack app completely for free. If you have a manifest that you want to paste in, this here is where you do it within the App Manifest tab. And you can literally take this out and copy your one in and save it. So creating the Slack app is one of the very, very first steps. Now, there's a next step that developers use, and that's something called GitHub, which is a repository for storing your code. So in my case, the code repo where my code sits is here. It's on github.com, but this is behind SSO, so you won't necessarily be able to connect to this because it's protected within my environment. But here I have a branch. And in my branch, I have defined some workflows. So do you remember I showed you the workflow back here that we installed here, Service Up X? That is backed by a code file. And I want to show you what that code file looks like. Here is the YAML file. So the anatomy of the workflow file is quite distinct. So you have some default configuration, an assignee if you connect to a ticketing environment. There's a very interesting part here, which is what library will my queries pull information from? So in my case, internally, we have an internal RAG system set up, which can again be set up like from scratch and for free yourself. Our RAG environment is set up from Git RAG Flow, which is an open source freeware piece of software which is backed by a database. And I'll show you that in just a few moments. So my library where I have defined my documentation is 140. Here I also have some labeling so that when a dialog box shows up, it's a particular size. Here's my welcome message. And remember when I showed you the workflow, there is the urgency of your request. Here is where you label what is going to appear in your workflow. In my case, I also have integration with PagerDuty because we use an on-call system. Here are the labels for troubleshooting that a customer can ask for. And then some other things then about like, collecting information, further information about the issue. So let's take a look at, so this is the anatomy of the questionnaire file. So this I create on my workstation. Oops. And I can VI that file. I can make changes to it. And then I'm connected to the origin, which is here on Git, and I'm able to push my changes into my branch. So that's the connectivity from my workstation to GitHub. The actual connection is secured by keys, and there's a very universal process for setting up keys between a GitHub repo and your laptop. It's a very universal process and it's very easy to follow. So that's the flow between laptop and Git repo, and also Git repo and Slack API as well. So now I think what I've tried to show you is that deep connection between the whole flow. And the next part of the puzzle then is showing you the RAG environment. So this is my FAQ database, which is where all of my documents are. I have a library here, which is 140, which I think that I showed you. And this is where I have to find the documents that my workflow searches. So the one that we chose here was, hey, I've got a problem installing the service. So please find summary of your issue, help me install service X. So here then, is there a document on installing service X? Yes, getting started. So this information here is what Einstein rehashed over here on the right-hand side and did it in human workable form. And it also said, hey, there's also a document link, and it did it in a nice readable form here. You see how it actually did the commands in nice readable form. And it also gave a link to the document that I have down here at the bottom, which is my Getting Started guide. So I hope that's given a fairly comprehensive understanding of how you can get started, how you can, use the API documentation and tutorials to understand how to create your bot, how to go to a Slack channel and import that bot, and then how to create a workflow file and import that workflow via the Workflows tab. Thank you very, very much.
Okay, Seema, that's the demo. So what did you learn?
Oh my God, I was so impressed on how much of help there's available to get started and how easy it is, as much as we think of, hey, these bots are, we have a lot of professional and a lot of stuff needed. It seemed like, yeah, there's a lot of help available and the steps seems pretty easy.
I can see there's lots of questions, Seema, and I know we're going to have time at the end to answer questions. One that I would just like to pick out right now is how long does it take end to end to create? It does depend on your skill set. If you already have, a job where you're actually doing software development, you're going to understand the connection between your laptop and Git very well. Setting up the keys will be really easy. Setting up the authentication tokens and API will be really easy for you as well. You'll understand all of the nuts and bolts and where they go. Probably maybe within 2 weeks, you could have something fairly decent. If you haven't used this technology at all, you're probably talking a little bit more like a couple of weeks. You'd want to be doing it like maybe, if say, for example, you're encouraged to spend 10% of your time looking as part of your week, looking at something new, like 10% of your time is 4 hours a week. You could easily block an hour per day and a couple of hours on a weekend if you wanted as well. And within 4 weeks, you'd have achieved an awful lot.
Fantastic.
Okay, as I mentioned before, I didn't want to just harp on about Slack all of the time. The technology that Slack and AI and RAG, in terms of that stack, in terms of availability, similar is available for Microsoft Teams and Google Chat. If you're using Microsoft, they have a bot framework, they have an AI builder, they have cognitive services, which is like the back end parts of the puzzle as well. Similarly in Google, they have Chat API, they have Google Cloud API services, and they have workspaces. I don't know enough about them to say whether all of the components are free. And of course, there are other frameworks and bots as well that I just depicted here just for to show the difference. So putting it all together, Seema, at the end of the day, AI plus Slack is going to give you something a little bit smarter than just humans on their own. Can slash your manual work and really increase the efficiency of teams. Getting started is a little bit scary. So get started with that small little environment. Use all of the resources on the internet to teach you step by step what to do. Play around with Slack API, play around with GitHub, and create one workflow. Small actions equal great things. You'll find that even your understanding of AI and technology will improve, your understanding of software development will improve. And if you can bring something useful to your team, it will boost productivity, of course, enhance end-to-end customer experience, and enable your team to scale more effectively than they are currently. So over to questions and answers. Seema, yeah, this is the exciting part.
Thank you. Rosalind, do you want to come back online? Should we go through the questions?
All right, guys. So we have a few questions, and let's get started. Can you please provide us some real life examples of these bots being used in work?
I can share one on top of my mind. As a leader of program management and project managers, we used to spend a lot of time reminding people to do either, hey, in security world, you need to fix your bugs, you need to take care of the vulnerabilities. So there was a lot of email and a noise around that. We've actually automated the hell out of it. A lot of this is just through bot reminder. You have a task too that's coming up. And in order to take action, click on this. So not only creating the bots, but also integrating it with the tools that are used so that people don't have to leave the workflow. They don't even have to actually go to the apps to do some of this work. They can actually do a lot of this through this workflows and bots. May that be your workday tasks. So a lot of process oriented stuff, reminders and approvals are getting automated through these bots.
Which I know is a crucial skill and tool to have because there is just always so much going on, I think, during the workday. And when you can take those reminders off of any of our plates, I think is absolutely just key. So thank you. Somebody else said, thank you so much for this great session. They wanted to check with you both on what are some cybersecurity roles for a person who has 7+ years of cybersecurity experience and is doing their master's focusing on AI.
So I might take a stab at this one. So I think AI is just another software engineering discipline. So any software engineering role that you're going to get in a 500 Fortune company is probably going to have some element of automation. Now that automation could be creating a program for just automating your own work in terms of what you do, but more often that software engineering element is now going to start including AI. So I would say, you want to be looking for AI engineering roles, software engineering roles, ML, RAG engine roles as well. So they're not really specific to cybersecurity. This is more an end software engineering type discipline.
Yeah, I'm going to add to it. Specifically in the cybersecurity, there's definitely a dire shortage as we look for, hey, in the IT, in terms of our incident management, right? There is, of course, a tier one, tier two, but there is that as the incidents are getting more and more complex, that expertise is needed in order to attend to the customers, understand what happens, all of that analysis. I think there's a lot of scope in that space of incident management, in the product also security world about it, in how do products implement security, what are the checks and balances. So I think there's a lot of potential even in the cybersecurity. If you are truly interested just purely on cybersecurity within detection and response, there's a lot of AI, ML over there, incident management, log management, a lot of stuff over there.
In terms of framework, I think what might be useful for the person who asked is take a look at the cloud architecture model. That cloud architecture model starts at the very, very bottom and looks at infrastructure security, network security, data security, applications, endpoint, IAM, and governance. In every single one of those cybersecurity disciplines, AI will have a role.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Going back to some of the technical content you guys went over can you go over how to create a library to have your RAG retrieval pull data from?
So I wouldn't even want to build a library. I would always want to use an open source product that already does this for me. If you want to take that code into your company, you would need a third-party product evaluation, most likely completed by your security assurance team or threat analysis team, before you would make it into production. But doing some demos and actually starting off in your dev environment with an open source tool is absolutely fine. I wouldn't recommend that anybody would want to go and create their own library for doing this. I think the basis is understanding what's out there and utilizing and getting used to what's there already. I hope that answers the question.
If it doesn't, we can have them reply back and we'll continue the conversation. Any tips on integrating this RAG workflow along with vulnerability management tools similar to Contrast and Snike? SNYK.
Sync, I think that is. I think it depends on what the problem you're trying to solve is. So I'd like to ask Shreya, what is that particular problem that you're trying to solve that AI could be useful for? And then I can help answer that a little bit better.
Yeah, I definitely think for this vulnerability management tools, the potential is huge. And we are, there's a lot of tools that a company like Salesforce uses, and to do RAG on these is a fantastic idea. I think everybody's beginning to explore it. Um, I don't think there's any concrete, I would say, but this is definitely an area that we're going to zone in more and more within the security world. So, a really good question.
While we're waiting for them to maybe type and bring some clarification to that question, does it matter which models and RAGs that an individual uses? Do you guys have any preferences?
I mean, I love OpenAI because that is just so accessible, and I even got my own account, and I've given it like some $20 credit, and I've got it to analyze small little videos for me and give me the transcript. So I love messing with OpenAI because it's just so easy. It's just so easy to integrate with. If you're a larger company, you are going to be at the mercy of what your AI team is implementing for you. There's no problem. Usually there's no problem in bringing in open source product as long as you keep them in dev. If you're going further than dev and off your laptop, you have to have some sort of a bar and some sort of an evaluation of that product before it goes into any other environment. I'll be very clear about that.
Yeah. I'm also going to add here, which is what I've done. Take the same query and post it to different LLMs and see which one responds better. I've done that myself just as a fun exercise. Whenever, hey, this new version got rolled out, I go back to the previous version and the new version and say, hey, do you really need to pay for this? So I would say do that experiment, and you'll actually get the answers in terms of your use cases, what you're looking for, which one serves best. But I'm with Elaine. I also tinker quite a bit with OpenAI.
Okay. They were able to provide some clarification. So I'm going to repeat that first part of the question and then bring in their clarification. So they were asking for tips on integrating this RAG workflow along with vulnerability management tools like Contrast. And they said they mean in identifying solutions to new issues based on how similar issues were fixed in the past.
I can take that. I don't know if it is for RAG, but use cases that we are exploring exactly for these kind of use cases. What can we learn from past? What are the templates that can be created? We're actually working with a lot of vendors like Nuclei, where we are templatizing some of these bugs and the vulnerabilities to say, hey, this is out there. So while we aren't creating our own RAG models, we are actually working with vendors. And a vendor that comes to my mind is Nuclei, that is developing these prototyping and templatization of it. So that's a really good question. We are definitely on this road.
Yeah, I think one of the key things is maybe not so much for RAG, but definitely when you're using an LLM. At the end, one of the features that I'm looking at the moment, which is the bot that I've implemented, is when you go to close the thread, it says, hey, how did I do? It'll actually do a summary of what it responded back to the customer. And it's like, hey, can you help me learn more? What should I have added in there that I didn't know about? So the inherent part of AI is that it will learn and it will be able to keep information as long as you permit it to keep information around what it has found on this incident before. So I think very much the use case that's been mentioned here is absolutely possible. And I know that from an incident management perspective, like that's something that we do internally in Salesforce, is we do use, technology to analyze and understand, hey, has this happened before? And if this happened before, what was done and who needs to be alerted? Of course, often there are manual triggers in there as well to make sure that the decision being made is the correct one. But the ability is certainly there.
Wonderful. So next question is, what do you recommend to teams about security and using external/free code?
I think I might have inadvertently answered that one before. A-OK in dev. If you're going any further than dev with any of these freeware tools, you need to have an internal security vetting process to make sure that anything from a third-party perspective is safe to bring into your production environment. Most companies will have their own guardrails and tools that they use to scan, identifying vulnerabilities and fixing them even before they go into the deployment process. So that's extremely important for tools like this to have that vetting process.
And then another question is, would you see that this model could be used as an agent one-to-one with compliance employees when auditing is conducted?
When auditing is conducted.
I love it.
Interesting one. I mean, certainly what I know that can be done is that audit evidence can be pre-recorded, and then potentially during an audit evaluation, you could use AI to retrieve the piece of evidence that's been generated for a particular control. During an actual audit, I would imagine that an external auditor is going to actually, the first thing they'll say is, hey, has your AI system been certified? So I think you'll end up full circle there, that unless the AI system is fully audited for use for auditing, you won't be able to use it in the first place. So I think that's actually nearly an industry in itself as well, to understand how AI tooling becomes compliant for use with either internal or external audit.
I would also say human plus agent. A lot of it can be done with the agents, but still, I think a lot of this still needs some kind of a human interface. It'll be interesting if we completely move to the world of just agents. If that auditor itself could be an agent, so it's an agent talking to another agent. That's going to be another use cases. I think that's what I mean by it's going to be really interesting.
Audits.
What is the appetite and what are the next few years going to be looking like?
Yeah. Wonderful. So this is we'll have one more question left, and they are curious if you're going to be sharing this presentation, or because I know from our end that this video and webinar will be available on Bright Talk indefinitely. We also upload it onto the WiCyS's YouTube page, so it'll be on that YouTube channel. But I wanted to defer to Elaine and Seema about if they want to share their slides.
Sure, I don't think we have any issues there.
Yeah, we'll be able to share.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. And if anyone would like to connect with Elaine or Seema, please feel free through LinkedIn.
Yep.
And I just want to say a special thank you from WiCyS and our viewing community for such an incredible webinar. Thank you both for your time this afternoon. Thank you, viewers, for joining us. And I hope everyone has a phenomenal rest of their day.
Our pleasure.
Our pleasure. And thank you for the opportunity here.
Oh,
thank you.
Our pleasure. Bye, everyone.